I, 25F, was with my ex David, 29 male. He has 5 brothers and sisters all younger than him, and among them there is Claire, 25F, who hates me to the highest degree and me the same. It is important for the story that I specify that Claire, David and their entire family are typically blonde white people with blue eyes, and that I am a mixed race girl. 10 years ago Claire and I were in the same school and in the same class. Everything was going well at the start of the year. We laughed together and had the same circle of friends. But halfway through the year, I started to slowly move away from her and make other friends, and I should point out that my other friends were black. I found that I had more chemistry with them, and at the time it was incredibly cool. I let myself be influenced by what my friends gave off, and life at school was very funny. One day, Claire came to talk to me about an assignment, and someone in that group of friends laughed and told Claire that she looked like an aspirin pill and one of those spoiled white women and girls. I got angry, and so did the rest of the group, telling her that this kind of thing was totally unnecessary and that she was just racist. She said the anti-white racist wasn't holding back and we should relax. Claire was very shocked and quickly left. We were young, so we continued to be friends with this person. But when she saw Claire, she always said, "Hey, op, there's your white girl, go say hi." I always told her to stop, but she laughed at that. Then one day with the group we decided to no longer be friends with this person. The year after school started, Claire was totally different. I don't know what she had against me, but she started pushing me in the hallways or looking at me badly. Day after day she did something to harass me. I asked her what her problem was, and she just told me that's what I deserved for being a fucking racist. I told her she was crazy and that I never said anything racist, and she told me that as I was friends with racists I was necessarily racist. I told her that my father was white and my mother black, that I was literally a mixture of both communities. She told me that it didn't justify anything and that I was still a racist. I said that the person who made the joke was no longer our friend anyway. She started singing about how I was racist and that I hated white people. I got angry and slapped her. Then we fought. From there, each of us harassed the other, and without seeing it, a sort of gang was created. Those who defended me, blacks and some mixed race, and those who defended Claire, whites, and that until for my family to leave town for my father's job. When I was 18 I met David. He was at the same university as me studying law. He was one of our seniors in our student circle. He was in his final year and sold his notes for those who needed them. He had a book that interested me and was selling it at half price. I contacted him and we met. Before buying the book, I asked him questions about certain teachers and that led to a discussion. We went to eat and spent the day talking. He explained to me that he wanted to become a business lawyer, that way he could help in the company that his father wants to build. I told him that I wanted to become a notary. At the end of the day, it was already getting late. He told me he was giving me the book as a gift. When he got back to the dorm, he sent me a text message saying it was great and that he wanted to see me again. That's how we started becoming friends. Even when he was no longer at university, we had developed the same circle of friends, so we see each other very often. During our years we were extremely close. David refused to go out with girls without giving a valid excuse, and everyone thought it was because he liked me. He never said anything. He was very secretive and never really liked talking about his feelings. It was during a trip for my birthday that David asked me out. It was when we got together that he first told me about his family. And that's also when I learned that Claire was his sister. I told him that Claire and I had a fight in high school, and he told me that it was a long time ago, and that normally she had moved on. He didn't introduce me to his family right away, and even our first time was 2 months after we made it official. David told me that he was cheated on once and that it was the worst experience of his life, that he fell into depression and almost killed himself because he thought he really loved this person. He told me that if he was so careful it was because he really wanted to do things well. He then told me very seriously that if he introduced me to his family it was because he intended to make me his wife later, and that if I didn't want to go further I had to tell him. I told him I really loved him and wanted to be with him. He then told me very seriously that if I committed myself, I must never break this promise because for him it was very serious, and that he wanted to be like his parents who have known each other for more than 40 years and who are still together. He told me that he will always be faithful and that I should do the same. I promised him yes. A few months later, I met his family. As soon as Claire saw me, she was furious and asked me what I thought I was doing with her big brother. I kept calm and told her that David and I were together. She then told her family that I was a racist and that I could not be integrated because I hated white people, blonde, with blue eyes. I told her to move on and that it wasn't me who said that. We had an argument and the meeting was cut short. Claire had bet that David and I would not last 1 year. We stayed 3 years together because of Claire. David's family was very distant from me. Claire said if I was there she wouldn't attend some of their meetings and I was left out a lot. David was furious about this, but at some point he stopped trying. Claire was sending me messages saying that David would always be on her side. I showed him the messages but he did nothing and brushed it off, saying not to pay attention. The last time I was at their house, Claire provoked me. No one said anything, so when I tried to defend myself, she started crying. David took me aside and told me to stop, because I was only reinforcing his family's contempt. I lost my temper and told him that he didn't even support me and that it was normal for his family to hate me after everything Claire said about me. He got angry and told me that Claire was still his sister. I was hurt and reminded him of all his promises he made to me about fidelity and loyalty. I told him that he was just a smooth talker but that he was in no way loyal. I saw that what I had said to him had really hurt him. I wanted to apologize, but he told me to leave. I left telling him it was over and he could stay with his sister. He tried to contact me again and again but I blocked him. He found a way to contact me again, then I changed of number. I didn't know I was pregnant, and that was 8 months ago. A few weeks ago, at the supermarket, I was at the checkout and I started having strong contractions. A security guard pulled me aside and asked if I was okay, then called an ambulance. David's parents were there and were very surprised. His mother started crying, telling her husband to look at my very rounded belly. When the ambulance arrived, I received some tests. Everything was fine, and while I was asked questions about the pregnancy, I answered that it was a boy and that I was going to give birth soon. The paramedics said that if I was having strong contractions again, that might mean the baby will be a few weeks premature, but that I shouldn't worry. David's mother kept crying, saying she was going to be a grandmother. I got annoyed and told her that surely not, with the way she and her family had treated me. After that, I left with a friend of mine that I had called. The next day I received a call from him asking if we could meet. I said no, I didn't want anything to do with him. He told me it was impossible because I had his child inside me. I told him that he didn't have to worry about him and that I was perfectly capable of raising him without him. He started crying, asking me why I hadn't told him anything. I replied that I didn't trust him and that I didn't want my son to be raised in a family like his, which resembles a sect where the guru is Claire. He told me that Claire hadn't done anything wrong, so I asked him if it was me who had done something wrong. He told me no, but that he didn't know who to believe. I asked him to find out what really happened between his sister and me. Then I hung up. 2 days ago I started receiving messages from his family. I was even added to a discussion group called Sorry for All Op, where everyone told me they were happy because things were going well, being the first grandchild in the family. His mother even sent a message where she cried and apologized, telling me that they finally knew the truth, because David had done research by asking questions of my friends and one of his colleagues who was at the same high school as us. This colleague was the one of my old friends in common with Claire. David asked me for a meeting, but I didn't respond. His parents send me apologetic messages in private and beg me to let them meet their grandsons. I don't respond, but they don't lose patience and continue to be polite with me. I always receive messages from his brothers and sisters who also apologize and suggest outings to make amends in person, casually. It makes me laugh to see how hypocritical they are and have all turned their jackets. Everyone forces Claire to apologize, and when she leaves the group, someone puts her right back in. I'm hesitant to leave the group. Since I joined, I read everything but don't respond to anything. Update 1. To begin with, after my first post, I had decided to be honest with his family and write a message in their group. I said that I wouldn't forgive their behavior for the world, that they never made the effort to treat me properly, and that it was only because I was pregnant that they were becoming even remotely human. I said that it was stupid to call me a racist and that it was an insult to my father and me, and that if I was a racist, I would never go out with David. I told them that I didn't want my son to be in a family where no member is willing to think for himself, that they should be grateful to Claire because thanks to her his parents and siblings will have a bad reputation with my son, and that he will grow up knowing what they did to his mother, and then I left the group. David phoned me within the hour. I answered expecting him to shout at me, but no. He asked me if I was all right and sounded tired. I told him yes, I was fine. He was quiet, then asked if we could meet tomorrow. I told him no, as I had an appointment at the hospital to see how the baby was. He asked me if he could come, and I agreed, as it was likely to be my last appointment before giving birth. My doctor told me I had to get ready because my son wanted to come out. During my last ultrasound, David started crying and asked the doctor to give him a photocopy. Then he asked to touch my belly, which I accepted with some hesitation. When he touched my belly, my son kicked. I had the impression that something had lit up inside David, because he had suddenly become silent, and his gaze was more determined. After the hospital, we went to a cafe. He told me that he was deeply sorry for everything that had happened with his family and that he wanted to be in his son's life, that nothing in the world could take him away from that, and that if necessary, he would cut ties with them for his son's sake. I told him he didn't need to go that far because I wasn't going to forbid him to see him anyway, that we just needed to establish custody. He said he didn't want custody but a family with me. That he realized that, because of his stupidity, he had forgotten that his intention was to marry me because he was sure I was the one, that when he felt my son's kick, he remembered why he had fallen in love with me. I inspired life in him, and by having his child, he's even more convinced. I said nothing. He added that he was going to talk seriously to his whole family, and that he was going to put up barriers for my sake and that of our son. After that, he dropped me off at my parents'. In the days that followed, we wrote to each other. He asked me how I was and sometimes came to my house, saw the baby's room and saw the name I had chosen for my son, Liam. He was very happy because that was his grandfather's name and David's middle name too. I told him that the only reason I'd chosen this name for my son was because my father was called Liam, and I poked him a little, saying that it must be hard for him to believe, because as a racist I couldn't show any sign of affection to my father, who is white. He apologized, saying that he was ashamed to have doubted me, but that Claire was so convincing. I told him it was good for him to believe his sister and that he just managed to show me where my place was in his life. After that, and he went home. The next day he came in with his parents. I was in shock and so were my parents. We all sat down and his parents apologized. His mother was crying, saying she'd seen the ultrasound and absolutely wanted to see me in person. His father was very moved, saying that in their family the first child is a blessing, and on top of that David is their eldest, and that's only more beautiful. My father then asked them why they thought I was racist when he himself was white. They said that Claire looked very genuinely hurt when she said all the things I put her through. I told them that Claire had started it and that I'd always been against that kind of talk, that I'd cut ties with the person who was saying it. Also, we were against it and that anyone could testify to that. They seemed embarrassed. Then they left with David. A few days later, I was in hospital, in labor. My father phoned David to let him know that I was in labor. He arrived at the hospital within 15 minutes, saying he wanted to see his wife and child. The nurse took him to my room and told me that my husband had arrived. I looked at David strangely, but he didn't look up. It took 25 hours to give birth. David was there from beginning to end and even ended up holding our son. He slept with us in the hospital and came to see Liam every day during the week. He had to stay at the hospital to watch over him because he was born a little early. After that, I was able to take Liam home with me. David came every day, and during one of his visits, he told me that his parents wanted to see the baby. I told him that I didn't really want anyone around my son at the moment and that he'd only been home for 2 weeks. He begged me to at least make a Zoom call, and I agreed on condition that it only lasted 10 minutes. I told her to make the call now, so that was the end of it. Claire was there, and when I answered, they were all asking if Liam and I were okay, and congratulating me, except Claire, of course. When the others asked if she had anything to say to me, she snapped that no one was going to force her to apologize, and that Liam might not even be David's son because I was a slut and mixed-race girls were known to be cheaters. David got angry and started yelling at his sister, so I just stood up, took Liam and showed them. Liam, 3 weeks old, has curly blonde hair and blue eyes. He has the same features as David, literally the same person, except that he's a little darker and, more importantly, both Liam and David have a birthmark at the corner of their nose. Liam's is smaller and on the other side, but it's there. The Zoom was silent, and it was David's father who broke the silence by saying, "Well, you didn't miss a thing, David, the kid's yours, you've got the same moon, that's what they call the birthmark." David's brother then said, "Claire, now can you stop talking shit and shut the fuck up?" David's sister, who came next, added, "Christian doesn't tell her to shut the fuck up, she has to apologize and then she'll shut the fuck up." After that, everyone started talking at once, David's mother cutting off everyone's microphones except Claire's. She then asked her daughter to apologize because she was ruining the family, and she was too old and wanted the chance to know her grandson. Claire started crying, saying that everyone was against her and that she hoped Liam would choke to death. David got up and took something and threw it at my computer. He was saying that if, because of his words, Liam ended up dying, he would kill him with his own hands and not even the devil could stop him. After that, Claire left the call. The Zoom was silent again, only Liam was crying. I had to move away, but I could hear David saying that from now on Claire was no longer his sister and that if anyone disagreed with that, they could leave the Zoom. Now everyone has stayed. His father said he was definitely going to take Claire out of his will and put Liam in, no matter what we said. After the Zoom meeting, David told me he was sorry about my computer and was going to buy me a new one. I said okay, after which he offered me to live with him and asked me to think about it. The Zoom meeting was yesterday, and I sincerely wonder whether David asked me to live with him because he still loves me, or whether it's just out of guilt. Now on to second story. Told my ex's husband he was an ab-side jerk after he called my son fat for eating candy, and now custody tensions are boiling over. Throwaway, fake names. I, 31M, have split custody of my son, Marcus, 12M, with my ex, Lena, 30F. Lena and I split up shortly after he was born, and stayed friends, but have been less communicative since she married Eric, 42M, 4 years ago. We have had disagreements. I don't approve of certain things they've been doing and they think I spoil him, but until recently we managed to keep things civil. Marcus is a great kid and I love him. He's smart, funny, and caring, and he's taught me so much about being a human. Having him saved my life and changed it for the better. He's also more or less my only family, so I really treasure him and our time together. Recently he's gotten chubby and depressed, which I only mention because it's relevant. I was concerned over my son gaining weight, but I didn't want to do much other than making sure we eat healthy. He's still active in sports, which I encourage, and a lot will change with puberty. His mom and stepdad are upset though, and I now know that they had Marcus on a restricted diet and are putting a lot of pressure on him to lose weight. At first it didn't seem like much, but it became more unreasonable. Before this incident, I got in trouble with Eric for buying Marcus a size up in clothes, since he thought that he should trim down to fit his old ones better. I told him that I wasn't going to apologize for giving my son pants. He never responded. Last week, when I came to pick him up, Marcus was still packing his bag. Lena invited me inside for coffee and we were making small talk when I heard shouting. Apparently Marcus had been hiding snacks in his room. Eric found candy bars in his overnight bag, which they no longer allow in the house, and pulled them out to show to us as evidence. I got upset when he called Marcus names and told him he wouldn't be fat if he weren't so greedy, and told him to treat my son with respect. Marcus went to the car, and things devolved. I said the thing in the title, called him a bully, and a lot of expletives got thrown around. I didn't hear from Lena until later when she texted to tell me that she was furious with me. I was still reeling from everything, so the conversation is a blur. I tried to tell her I was sorry, but that I couldn't understand why she would allow him to treat Marcus that way. She told me that while it was a bit much, Marcus broke their rules and Eric was right that he should lose weight. She also told me that I don't know anything about the disrespect Marcus gives them, that I only experience the fun parts of being a parent, and accused me of encouraging bad behavior that she has to deal with. I had a talk with Marcus and told him I love him and he has nothing to be ashamed of. He seems better, but I'm not looking forward to taking him back to his mom's home. I know I made things worse and I should have removed myself from the situation, but I wouldn't feel right if I didn't at least stand up for my son. Custody is 50-50, EOW every other week / and it's more even now, but my ex has taken him on several times when work or school got out of hand for me, so he's been with her more on average. I owe her for that and I want to make it up to her, but I need to reflect on and talk to her about the idea that I'm the fun parent and how I can fix that. That being said, it's kind of a secondary concern RN considering what's going on with my kid. I didn't think it was that weird and probably underestimated the issue based on my judgment of my child's weight changes being normal, but I should have picked up on other red flags. If this is what's happening in front of me, I fear it's very likely much worse, and just making my home a safe space for my kid isn't enough. What I'm getting from this situation is that I really need to talk to a bunch of professionals. Update 1. There's a lot of things I need to do as a father, and I value all of your feedback. I do want to respond to something. I've had a few people in the comments tell me that Eric is my son's other dad by virtue of being in that house and married to my ex, but I guess my problem is that I don't think he should be. I would be more than happy to welcome another parental figure in my kid's life. I don't think I have a monopoly on being dad or anything, but as it stands, my child hates and fears him, and I do not think anyone who does that to my child deserves to call themselves his parent. I felt the same way about my bio parents, and I refuse to acknowledge them as my family, so I guess that's where that comment about him not being my son's dad came from. That being said, I know I'm in the wrong for shouting at him out of anger instead of trying to be the adult, and this does nothing to help my son. I also don't want anyone blaming any of this on my son or suggesting that he's being a dick to his mom and stepdad. He's 12 and children act out of distress when adults treat them poorly or fail them, myself included. He's the only person in this situation who's not at fault. I will keep trying to talk to my ex, get counseling for my son, and seek out legal advice. Update 2. Many pointed out the way my Lena and Eric treat my son would push him towards disordered eating or could be malnutrition. Unfortunately, it seems to be some degree of both. I learned more what they let Marcus eat, 900 to 1000 calories /day versus recommended 2500 for active preteens, which pushed him to sneak food. The humiliation is also constant behind closed doors. I fear there's more he's afraid to tell me. He's physically okay, according to pediatrician, but hurt. I'm trying to make sure he knows he has nothing to be ashamed of, and that the person who should be ashamed is the one who did this. Other things in my ex's house. Eric apparently often starts nasty fights with Marcus. He has also said some pretty demeaning / disturbing things about my background, which is unsurprising. His mom gets shouted down when she tries to defend him. She both sides the situation afterwards, holding husband and child equally responsible. Lena reached out to apologize. She said that she knows Eric was wrong and promised to try and talk sense to him. I told her this wasn't enough and asked why she went along with it. She seemed to wake up when I told her that they seriously hurt Marcus, and agreed that their behavior was unacceptable, but begged me to let her try and fix it. She seemed really tired and unwell and completely different from my former friend. I asked if she feels safe at home. She wouldn't give me a straight answer but promised that she's not physically unsafe and will seek help if needed. I feel for her but no longer trust her. I recorded the call just in case. We're in a one-party consent country, and we'll keep gathering evidence. Honestly, I'm scared. I was failed badly by social services / courts as a kid, so I don't have faith in them. It's also complicated because Lena and I never married. I'm a legal guardian, but we had Marcus as teens with no support, and there's a complex history. I'm saving details for the lawyer to get advice specific to my situation, but I'm not letting Eric near my son.